Good afternoon and welcome to the press conference following the EU-India leaders meeting. We will first listen to the President of the European Council, the President of the European Commission and Prime Minister Costa, of course, and we will then take questions. We are also joined by the press in India. Warm welcome to them in Delhi and all around India. We will take questions both here in Porto and remotely also in Brussels. And I would just like to point out that we have interpretation in English, French and Portuguese. Please, Mr. President, you have the floor.
Merci beaucoup. Mes premiers mots sont naturellement pour Antonio Costa, le Premier ministre du Portugal, pour adresser au nom de tous les collègues nos remerciements pour l'organisation à la fois hier d'un sommet social qui marque une étape essentielle dans l'histoire de la construction européenne et pour avoir veillé à ce que l'on puisse travailler de manière sérieuse et intense sur différents thèmes que nous allons aborder dans des conditions tout à fait optimales. Merci beaucoup, Antonio, pour ton hospitalité. Merci aussi à l'ensemble de tes équipes qui ont été mobilisées pour permettre cet accueil dans cette jolie ville de Porto. Vous le savez, nous avons eu un moment important, un moment même exceptionnel qui vient de se terminer à l'instant, cette rencontre avec le Premier ministre Modi, qui partage d'ailleurs des liens particuliers, spéciaux, avec le Premier ministre du Portugal, qui ont été mentionnés tout à l'heure. First, I would like to thank you, Prime Minister Costa, for hosting this important EU-India leaders meeting with Prime Minister Modi. We expressed our sympathy to Prime Minister Modi and the people of India as they battle the current COVID surge. The European Union stands in full solidarity with India at this critical time. We already activated help mechanisms and we are ready to provide further support. COVID is the greatest challenge of global solidarity in generations. The only way out is to immunize the global population. We discussed EU-India cooperation on this matter. I'm also happy to announce the EU and India are opening a new important chapter in our relationship. We are the world's two largest democracies. We are natural partners in many areas. A robust partnership based on shared values and convergent interests will benefit our citizens, the Indo-Pacific region, and the wider world. We have today agreed on concrete steps to expand this strategic partnership. Today, we agreed to launch negotiations on mutually reinforcing agreements on trade, on investment protection, and on geographical indications. This is an important first step. We are also launching our new connectivity partnership, and this is a major project that will promote high standard infrastructure for sustainable and resilient economic growth and foster exchanges between our people. We have resumed our human rights dialogue after 8 years, and this is very good news, because human rights, gender equality, and equal opportunities are at the heart of our engagement with India. And pure security cooperation is growing in many areas, from securing maritime routes to combating terrorism and fighting cybercrime. Today, we showed the strength of the EU-India relationship and its great potential. Nous avons aussi eu hier soir l'occasion d'avoir un échange de vues sans conclusion écrite sur la question du Covid-19. Et je voudrais résumer brièvement les quelques points qui traduisent le débat politique qui est intervenu dans le cadre de cette réunion informelle du Conseil européen. Premier point, de manière générale, nous constatons des progrès significatifs sur le plan européen en termes de production et de distribution de doses de vaccins. C'est un point qui a été salué de manière générale par l'ensemble des délégations, mentionnant le rôle important joué à cet égard par la Commission européenne. 2, nous mesurons bien que nous devons rester vigilants, attentifs s'agissant de la question des mutants et des variants. Un monitoring permanent est nécessaire, nous le menons, et la nécessité de continuer à soutenir activement la science et la recherche est nécessaire également sur ce sujet-là. 3, nous avons eu un débat et un échange en lien avec l'avancement de notre ambition de développer une même approche en termes de Digital Green Certificates, de certificats Covid. Les trilogues ont démarré dans le cadre de la responsabilité de la présidence portugaise et nous avons considéré qu'il était important, lors du prochain Conseil européen qui devrait avoir lieu à Bruxelles le 25 mai, de revenir sur ce sujet pour s'assurer que des progrès auront été réalisés et que l'on pourra tenter de résoudre les quelques difficultés auxquelles nous sommes encore confrontés afin de pouvoir progressivement retrouver une capacité de circuler en Europe grâce à cet instrument commun que nous souhaitons mettre en place. Et puis, le 4e point qui a animé nos débats, c'est bien sûr l'engagement de l'Union européenne pour la solidarité internationale. Nous le savons, vous le savez, personne ne sera en sécurité face à cette pandémie de Covid-19 si le monde entier n'est pas protégé, si le monde entier n'est pas en sécurité. Et c'est pour laquelle, depuis le premier jour de cette mobilisation à l'échelle européenne, il y a plus d'1 an, contre le Covid-19, nous avons affirmé cette solidarité. D'abord, en mobilisant beaucoup de moyens pour la recherche et contribuer à faire en sorte que rapidement des vaccins puissent être disponibles pour l'humanité. Ensuite, en participant activement à cette initiative COVAX pour veiller à ce que dans tous les pays du monde, des doses puissent être accessibles. L'Union européenne est un contributeur majeur de ce projet COVAX. 3, en veillant, et c'est un point essentiel, à ce qu'au départ de l'Union européenne, des exportations de vaccins soient possibles. Et c'est autour de 50% des doses qui sont produites sur le sol européen qui sont exportées, ce qui témoigne de notre solidarité, de notre engagement à maintenir les chaînes d'approvisionnement ouvertes. Et on encourage tous nos partenaires, y compris les pays producteurs de vaccins, à suivre cet exemple en protégeant et en maintenant les chaînes d'approvisionnement et en veillant en sorte que les exportations soient possibles. Bien sûr, nous avons eu le débat aussi sur la question de la propriété intellectuelle des vaccins et cette libéralisation de la propriété intellectuelle des vaccins. Différents sentiments ont été exprimés et opinions ont été exprimées par rapport à cela. Nous sommes déterminés à soutenir tous les éléments qui peuvent conduire à augmenter la production sur le plan mondial et la délivrance rapide de vaccins. Cependant, à court terme, beaucoup d'entre nous autour de la table pensent que ce n'est pas une solution magique qui résoudrait tout. Cependant, il va de soi que nous sommes prêts à rester engagés sur des débats extrêmement concrets. C'est par exemple ce que nous faisons en Europe depuis quelque temps déjà avec des pays africains pour tenter de stimuler des partenariats privés, publics avec le support des institutions européennes pour que l'on puisse concrètement augmenter les capacités de production et veiller à la diversification aussi des chaînes d'approvisionnement dans les secteurs pharmaceutiques. Et puis, enfin, last but not least, the social commitment, the social ambition. This was yesterday a very important meeting with a very strong participation yesterday during this high-level summit of many heads of state and heads of government, which is a very clear signal, a very clear symbol of this European ambition at the social level. And we remember 4 years ago in Göteborg, a first important step under the leadership of Stefan Löfven. 4 years later, with this very strong commitment of Antonio Costa and the President of the Commission, we take and we are taking one more step, one important step in direction of a more social Europe. La réunion de hier a été une réunion enthousiasmante parce que nous mesurons qu'au-delà des différences entre les différents pays européens, entre les différents acteurs de la société économique, sociale, la société civile, les acteurs politiques, il y a de plus en plus une convergence fondée sur cette conviction que la dignité de chaque Européen, elle passe par la capacité à consolider un modèle social européen. Les débats ont été riches, les débats ont été vifs. La Commission a mis sur la table un plan d'action qui est une épine dorsale qui va animer le débat démocratique européen au sens noble du terme tout au long des prochains mois. Et il y a un élément important que je voudrais souligner parce qu'il mérite de l'être, me semble-t-il. Pour la première fois, avec une grande clarté, il y a l'expression, au travers des conclusions qui ont été validées à l'unanimité ce matin par les chefs d'État et de gouvernement de cette ambition de traiter aussi au plus haut niveau du Conseil européen, cette ambition sociale et cet engagement aussi de revenir régulièrement au niveau des chefs d'État et de gouvernement pour apprécier, pour monitorer les progrès que nous l'espérons pourront être réalisés dans les prochains mois, dans les prochaines années, pour consolider cet engagement social de l'Union européenne. Vous l'avez compris, une Europe plus verte qui prend à bras-le-corps le défi du changement climatique, une Europe plus digitale qui considère qu'il y a là un levier pour la modernisation, mais aussi pour le renforcement de la prospérité, et une Europe plus sociale qui veille à ce qu'il y ait de la fraternité, de la solidarité et un accès égal aux chances et aux opportunités pour l'ensemble des citoyens européens. Voilà le chemin qui a été dessiné aujourd'hui à Porto. Et merci encore, Antonio, pour ta mobilisation et pour ton engagement.
Thank you, Mr. President. Madam President, you have...
Thank you so much. First of all, I also want to thank you, Antonio, for being such an outstanding host and very intensive, highly interesting 2 days, indeed, starting with the Social Summit. As we had a long press conference yesterday, I want to focus on the 2 other topics today, the COVID-19 and, of course, the summit, the EU-India summit. What COVID-19 is concerned, I updated leaders on the good progress we have with our vaccination campaign. We have now delivered over 200 million doses to the European people. So we are on track to achieve our objective of enough doses being delivered in July to vaccinate 70% of the European adult population. Of course, delivering vaccine doses is good, but vaccination is even better. So the numbers here are close to 160 million Europeans now have already received a first shot of the vaccine. That's over 25% of the EU population. This is good news, and we will continue like this. A topic that was important is, of course, that everybody is thinking about the summer season. And I understand how important that is. It is important for people to plan ahead their holidays. It is so important for workers in tourism, hospitality, or in the transport sector who hope to be once again in employment, and for businesses, of course, in those sectors who are expecting to start their recovery. To achieve this, vaccination is indeed the key parameter. But we must also enable travel within and to the European Union. So I updated yesterday the leaders on the progress in this area. I'm glad to report that the legal and the technical work on the EU travel certificate, the vaccination certificate, is on track for the system to be operational in June. There are 2 different approaches that are important. One is the political front. Here, thanks to the excellent job done by the Portuguese presidency in the Council, as well as the Parliament's speed in reaching a position, we can realistically aim to have a political agreement by the end of this month. And this would allow for the system to be rolled out and people to carry with them unfalsifiable proof that they have been vaccinated, or they have a negative, mutually recognized test, or they have overcome COVID and thus antibodies. There was another point I could report on yesterday, because of course this is one track now to overcome the pandemic here through the vaccination campaign. But of course we must not let our guard down, and we must prepare for the future. And therefore, I was glad that I could announce that we now concluded the negotiations with BioNTech Pfizer for a new contract looking forward to the years 22 and 23. The new contract secures 1.8 billion doses of vaccines, mainly because there are 3 more topics that are clear for us we have to cover with potential vaccines. The first topic is sooner or later, children and teenagers will be vaccinated. For that, we have to prepare. Second, there is the question of how long does the immunity last with the first 2 shots of vaccination. So when is it necessary after a certain amount of time to give a boost for the vaccination for the whole European population again? And of course, the big and important topic of escape variants, or sometimes they're being called variants of concern. And these 3 topics are for us important to be covered, to be prepared for. Therefore now this big follow-up contract with BioNTech Pfizer. But of course we will also explore other contracts, for example, based on other technologies like the protein-based technologies. The key point is to keep our options open, and we have seen how crucial it is for us to have a broad portfolio of vaccines to be prepared for unexpected issues. Finally, of course, we have discussed the role of the European Union in the global vaccination effort. And when it comes to the proposal of a temporary TRIPS waiver for vaccine intellectual property rights, as I've said before, I think it is very important we should be open to this discussion. We should also, for example, have a close look at the role of licensing. These are important topics to discuss, but we should be aware of the fact that these are topics for the long term. It's not a topic for the short term or the medium term. And we should therefore not lose sight of the main urgencies now, which is ramping up indeed the vaccine production as quickly as possible and ensuring that they are fairly and evenly distributed. So there are 3 topics that should be tackled with a discussion about TRIPS waiver or licensing. And this is, first of all, export. The European Union is the pharmacy of the world and open to the world. Up to today, in the European Union, 400 million doses of vaccines have been produced, and 50% of them, 200 million doses, have been exported to 90 different countries in the world. So we invite others to do the same. This is the best way right now, in the short term, to approach the bottlenecks and the lack of vaccines worldwide. The second point, indeed, is that we have to support COVAX. We have massively financed COVAX, as well as sharing our vaccines, both via COVAX and bilaterally with our neighborhood. Some member states have already shared, like Romania, France, and Austria, but also committed to do so, like Spain, like Portugal, like Sweden, and I know that Poland is going to follow. And the third topic is indeed the investment in global manufacturing. We have invested a lot with the advance purchase agreements in the manufacturing or scaling up of the manufacturing right now, as we see it. But there needs to be more investment in global manufacturing capacity. For example, the Commission, in partnership with Germany, is already helping to develop local pharmaceutical manufacturing capacity in the southern part of Africa. And we are also supporting the development of the Institut Pasteur in Dakar in Senegal, together with the European Investment Bank, France, Germany, and Belgium. So these are just examples how to approach that topic. And last but not least, the European Commission is working on a flagship Team Europe initiative with our African partners to very concretely build up capacity in Africa. This topic was also, and this is the bridge, the topic, of course, that has been discussed with Prime Minister Modi. Indeed, it was for us a very important historical moment. First of all, to make sure that the European Union stands firmly at the side of India in this most challenging time. And we assured the Prime Minister of our solidarity and the support with all what is needed at the moment, being from oxygen generators to medicines and ventilators. 17 EU member states have supported worth over 100 million euros of supply that has been brought to India and is being brought in the next days through the EU Civil Protection Mechanism, and further assistance will follow. It was a remarkable summit because it widened the scope and the view on the untapped potential in the relationship of the European Union and India. And I really want to thank you, Antonio, that you seized your presidency to organize this summit. This is outstanding, this is historical, and it was impressive to see around the table of the 27 to have this extraordinary summit. It is a landmark moment, and indeed, we have agreed that we will resume the negotiations on a free trade agreement. If you just keep in mind that free trade agreement negotiations started in 2007, have been stopped in 2013, and nothing happened in between, and now they are being resumed. It shows the importance of this summit. We will also launch negotiations on investment protection and of negotiations on the important topic of geographical indications. There were other discussions on other topics like cooperation on the World Trade Organization reform, regulatory cooperation, and resilient value chains. We also discussed the topic of climate change. India is the fourth biggest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world, and it is impressive to see how India is stepping forward now in this topic too. We discussed the importance of committing to climate neutrality and complete phase out from fossil fuels, for example, in view of the crucial UN COP26, so to have a very ambitious goal, because the experience with India in the past showed that once India has set itself a goal, it delivers. India is delivering on the goal it has set itself, so it is important that ambitious goals are being taken for the COP26. And last but not least, our partnership on connectivity. It is the second only of such a connectivity partnership after Japan. It will bring our two regions closer in mobility and transport, but of course also in the digital field. India is a powerhouse of digitization, so this shows the width, and these were only a few examples of the cooperation with India. Thanks again to Antonio Costa for having convened this summit.
Thank you, Madam President. Prime Minister, you have the floor.
Muito obrigado. Eu queria começar por agradecer à Comissão Europeia, na pessoa de Ursula von der Leyen, e ao Conselho, na pessoa do Charles Michel, o verdadeiro trabalho de equipa que desenvolvemos ao longo de mais de um ano para termos chegado a esta cimeira alcançando com sucesso dois dos principais objetivos da presidência portuguesa. Em primeiro lugar, a realização desta cimeira com a Índia. A Europa e a Índia são os dois maiores espaços democráticos do mundo e a sua parceria estratégica tem uma enorme relevância do ponto de vista geoestratégico, na defesa do multilateralismo e na junção dos esforços para enfrentarmos juntos grandes questões globais, hoje o Covid-19, seguramente durante muito tempo o combate contra as alterações climáticas. Pela primeira vez, estas cimeiras não foram cimeiras meramente institucionais, como as anteriores, onde estava presente o Primeiro-Ministro indiano, a presidência da Comissão, a presidência do Conselho e a presidência rotativa. Pela primeira vez tivemos uma cimeira onde o Primeiro-Ministro indiano esteve com as instituições europeias, mas também com os 27 líderes da União. E é muito significativo, no momento em que a Índia vive uma situação tão dramática do ponto de vista do Covid, o Primeiro-Ministro Narendra Modi não tenha adiado esta cimeira, a tenha mantido, e apesar de ter sido feita através de videoconferência, ter tido resultados tão importantes. A Presidente da Comissão já o sublinhou. Desde 2013 que estavam interrompidas as negociações para um acordo de comércio e um acordo de investimento. Desta vez, não só decidimos relançar estas negociações, como abrir negociações para a proteção das indicações geográficas e avançamos com uma parceria estratégica na área da conectividade, no digital, na energia, no transporte e nas relações entre os povos. Creio, por isso, poder dizer que esta foi uma cimeira de sucesso e que as portas ficam abertas para que possamos avançar e concretizar rapidamente estes acordos com a Índia. Estes acordos são fundamentais para o relançamento também da economia global, também para a nossa economia, também para a economia indiana e, por isso, acho que agora temos todas as condições para acelerar na concretização destes acordos de comércio e de investimento e de proteção das indicações geográficas. Segunda dimensão muito importante, colocar o pilar social no centro das políticas europeias. Ontem tivemos um momento histórico, que foi a assinatura entre as instituições e todos os parceiros sociais de um compromisso. Esse compromisso foi depositado nas mãos do Presidente do Conselho e hoje foi a vez do Conselho aprovar a Declaração do Porto. E não querendo ler aqui a extensa Declaração do Porto, há 6 pontos fundamentais que eu gostaria de enfatizar, porque traduzem um compromisso efetivo do Conselho relativamente à importância do pilar social. Em primeiro lugar, a afirmação clara de que a Europa tem de ser o continente da coesão social e da prosperidade. Isto significa, designadamente, que o pilar europeu dos direitos sociais é um elemento fundamental da recuperação, que a sua aplicação irá intensificar a transição digital, ecológica e equitativa, contribuirá para alcançar uma convergência social e económica ascendente e para dar resposta aos desafios demográficos. Em segundo lugar, o Conselho congratulou-se com a realização da cimeira com os parceiros sociais e sublinhou mais uma vez como o diálogo social é um elemento central da nossa economia social de mercado. Terceiro aspecto muito importante. O Conselho diz claramente: estamos determinados a continuar a aprofundar a aplicação do pilar europeu dos direitos sociais. O plano de ação apresentado pela Comissão fornece orientações úteis para a aplicação deste pilar europeu dos direitos sociais, nomeadamente nas áreas do emprego, das competências, da saúde e da proteção social. O Conselho congratula-se em particular com a essência de grandes metas quantificadas por parte da Comissão Europeia, em matéria de empregabilidade, em matéria de formação e em matéria de combate à pobreza. E também com a construção de um conjunto de painel de indicadores que têm que ser inseridos no quadro da coordenação das políticas económicas no âmbito do semestre europeu. Significa isto que o Conselho aceita que o semestre europeu não seja só um semestre de revisão dos critérios macroeconómicos, dos critérios de estabilidade financeira, mas passará a ser também uma avaliação do contexto social da União Europeia. Em quarto lugar, o compromisso de passar da proteção à criação do emprego e melhorar a qualidade do emprego, sendo que melhorar a qualidade do emprego significa a aplicação dos princípios do Pilar Europeu dos Direitos Sociais, de forma a avançar a nível da União Europeia e dos Estados-membros com os trabalhos legislativos e não legislativos que sejam necessários. Isto implica, designadamente, colocar a educação e as competências no centro da nossa ação política. Investir na educação, na formação profissional, na aprendizagem ao longo da vida, na melhoria de competências e na requalificação são fundamentais. Ao mesmo tempo que as mudanças relacionadas com a transição digital, a inteligência artificial, o teletrabalho, a economia das plataformas, exigem uma atenção especial a fim de reforçar os direitos dos trabalhadores, os sistemas de segurança social e a saúde e a segurança no trabalho. Quinto elemento, muito importante, o Conselho afirma estar empenhado em reduzir as desigualdades em termo e em assegurar salários justos, bem como em lutar contra a exclusão social e a pobreza, e em particular a pobreza infantil, em combater os riscos de exclusão de grupos sociais particularmente vulneráveis, como são os desempregados de longa duração, os idosos, as pessoas portadoras de deficiências ou as pessoas sem abrigo. Compromete-se também no combate contra a discriminação e, em particular, contra a discriminação baseada no género, enfatizando a necessidade de eliminar as disparidades de género no emprego, designadamente em matéria salarial. E, por fim, o compromisso de dar uma atenção muito especial ao que diz respeito à política para os jovens, que têm uma taxa de desemprego muitíssimo elevada, dificuldades de acesso à habitação acessível e à autonomização da sua vida e cuja situação de precariedade constitui hoje mesmo a maior ameaça ao equilíbrio demográfico e ao futuro da Europa. Creio que são, por isso, compromissos muito claros por parte do Conselho, que, tendo tomado em devida conta o compromisso que foi assumido pelos parceiros sociais, se compromete agora a agir com um conjunto de afirmações muito concretas e cumprem o objetivo que nos tínhamos proposto de recolocar o pilar social no centro das políticas europeias. Creio, por isso, que podemos sair daqui com a convicção reforçada de que quer a Comissão, quer o Conselho, quer o Parlamento Europeu estão todos alinhados no mesmo objetivo, de dar toda a prioridade a uma recuperação que seja baseada na transição digital, na transição climática, mas que seja também uma recuperação justa, que não deixe ninguém para trás, abra oportunidades para todos e, sobretudo, abra oportunidades para termos mais e melhor emprego para o futuro, em particular para as jovens gerações.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. And if I may, we just released on our Council website the joint statement as well, which I wanted to point out on the EU-India meeting, so please check it out. We're going to take a couple of questions here in the room first. Susanna Freshes, you go first. Please, you'll have to stand up and go to the microphone under COVID restrictions.
Can I take my mask off?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Thank you, Susanna Freshes, SIC Expresso. Madam President, I would like to ask you, first of all, regarding the IP waiver, were you somehow surprised by this US move? Did you speak to President Biden before he announced this move? And I understand that this is not going to solve the problem in the short term, but eventually the long term is going to be there. Shouldn't the European Union start this discussion now at OMC? Monsieur le Président, on parle aujourd'hui des inégalités entre femmes et hommes, le pilier social. Il y a pas longtemps, vous avez dit au Parlement européen que vous allez vous engager vous-même pour mobiliser les États membres pour débloquer la directive sur les inégalités hommes-femmes parmi les administrateurs non exécutifs des sociétés cotées en bourse. Vous l'avez fait aujourd'hui, ça c'est la question. Quand comptez-vous débloquer cette directive? Senhor Primeiro-Ministro, gostaria de perguntar-lhe se acha que é possível ainda um entendimento sobre o salário mínimo, ou um salário mínimo justo europeu, durante a presidência portuguesa, no seio do Conselho, claro. Obrigada.
Yes, if I may start with the discussion concerning the IP waivers. So the discussion is there. So if you ask, shouldn't we start it now, it is there. And it is an important discussion. The point that I want to emphasize is, yes, we are willing to go into that discussion, but then we need a real 360-degree view on it, and we should not shy away from other topics that are in this big question: where do vaccines come from for the whole world? And indeed, here the discussion is either IP waivers, does it really bring more vaccines? So how is the knowledge transfer? How are you able to make sure that the skilled workforce is there, that the capacities are there, that the processes are going in a way that at the very end you have safe and effective vaccines? We have seen in the production process right now with the approved vaccines how difficult it is to have a stable delivery of vaccines. We see production sites that do not bring any kind of yield. So even today, there are companies who are not able to really deliver on the vaccines in a very complex production process. But I think we should indeed discuss it. We should also discuss widely the question of licensing and the price of licensing. But again, this is something which will not bring within the next months, perhaps the next year, any vaccines. But we need vaccines now. And therefore, the investment in capacities as we have it today was and is good, should go on. It should be more extended to other regions of the world. This has already started. But the second point is those regions who are producing vaccines at large scale should share these vaccines through export. And again, I can only repeat, we are the only democratic region in the world that is producing vaccines at large scale and exporting on average 50% of the production. This brings vaccines right now. 200 million doses have been distributed to almost 90 countries. This is effective. And the second point is indeed sharing of doses, so not only export but also sharing of doses through COVAX is of utmost importance, and on top then the investment in capacities. By that, what I want to say is, let's lead the whole discussion. Let's invite everybody to join in vaccine sharing, everybody to join in export, fair export, everybody to join in the investment of capacities, not only in the own region, but also abroad, and the discussion on licensing and IP waivers.
Merci beaucoup. Quelques mots sur la question que vous m'adressez. En effet, au Parlement européen, j'ai pris l'engagement de me mobiliser politiquement pour faire avancer un certain nombre de sujets qui touchent directement à l'égalité homme-femme. La directive que vous mentionnez est en fait bloquée dans le cadre du Conseil de l'Union depuis à peu près 10 années. Et mes équipes, avec les équipes de la présidence rotative, travaillent afin de voir de quelle manière on peut ramener ce dossier à l'agenda politique. Et ça signifie aussi que je vais continuer à tenter de faire un plaidoyer sur ce sujet-là pour faire avancer cet engagement qui est un engagement important. De la même manière, dans le cadre du sommet social hier, dans le cadre des discussions que nous avons eues aujourd'hui, d'autres thèmes ont été aussi abordés qui touchent à l'égalité entre les femmes et les hommes, comme naturellement la question des salaires à travail égal, salaire égal. Ça doit être aussi une mobilisation pour l'ensemble de l'Union européenne. Et j'espère que l'on pourra faire bouger les lignes sur ce sujet, même si je sais que ce sont des sujets qui sont difficiles depuis longtemps pour certains États membres. Mais nous souhaitons pouvoir, avec la Commission et la présidence rotative, ramener plus en haut de l'agenda ces thèmes importants qui traduisent les valeurs européennes.
Bom, as presidências portuguesas têm método de trabalho já muito consolidado. Poucas declarações proclamatórias, muito trabalho com descrição, bons resultados sempre partilhados. É assim que com o Parlamento Europeu temos trabalhado nestes meses, fechando toda a legislação já sobre o quadro financeiro plurianual, sobre o Fundo de Recuperação, desbloqueando a situação da Conferência do Futuro da Europa, que amanhã, aliás, será oficialmente aberta, tendo concluído a Lei do Clima. Relativamente à proposta diretiva do salário mínimo, estamos naquela segunda fase, que é o trabalho discreto. Vamos ver se temos bons resultados para partilhar.
Next question is for Marco Bressolin, La Stampa.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me? Sorry, it's the habit. Concerning the manufacturing vaccine outside EU, what can EU do concretely? I mean, are you going to invest EU money to push for partnership with the private sector? Are you going to push the pharma company to share the technology? And the question for President Costa. Today, President von der Leyen announced the new contract with Pfizer for 1.8 billion doses. That's a lot. It's enough to inoculate vaccine 2 times for the entire European population. Are you and your colleagues ready to share part of these vaccines with the rest of the world, with the poorest country? Thank you.
So what the pharmaceutical, or what the investment in capacities abroad is concerned, indeed, this is the approach to have financing schemes. As I said, one example is Institut Pasteur in Senegal already, where the European Investment Bank is involved. But of course, from European funds, there needs also to be a public part of the investment done too. And indeed, we have started discussions with some pharmaceutical companies who also have already their ideas how they could extend their capacities in a way that is beneficial for example, our African partners. There is, for example, the model of container-based labs ready to go that is being developed, because of course there's a lot of detail if you build up a capacity, and the container-based model gives you the opportunity to come with a, let's say, ready-to-go lab in a small scale, where you train then the workforce to achieve the skills that are necessary. But the first step to build up the whole capacity is avoided, and you can start at a smaller scale immediately with the training of people, but of course also with results that are there. And indeed, if I may also have a look at the second question you were asking, the 1.8 billion is a lot. And therefore, there is already built in the contract that it includes the possibility for the member states to donate or resell doses. So the amount of doses is so large in order to be able to also serve our neighborhood, for example. And this is a principle too, that we invest now in a potential risk to come. We do not know what's going to happen, whether we're going to have escape variants or not. But we have already a width of, or an amount of doses in the portfolio that is potentially more than we will need, and that we know from the experience now that this is good because you can export, but you can also donate, or for lower price you can resell.
Un mot pour simplement compléter ce que Ursula a indiqué. Je crois sur le premier point que vous soulevez, que l'approche qui est mise en œuvre, notamment avec plusieurs pays africains et des partenaires privés, est l'approche la plus efficace pour intégrer de manière globale les différentes dimensions de cette question. Il y a évidemment un accès de propriété intellectuelle, mais il y a d'autres aspects. Les transferts de technologies, la capacité de former aussi le personnel, de développer, notamment en Afrique, plus de capacités sur le plan pharmaceutique, sur le terrain des vaccins, mais pas seulement sur le terrain des vaccins. And a second important point, we are discussing with the African Union, because in Africa there are certainly a short list of countries totally committed in order to try to play a stronger role in this field. The European Investment Bank has certainly also a role to play, and it means a support by the governments, by the public authorities in Europe, in Africa, but also an important role for the private sector. And I repeat that in my opinion, in the midterm, this is the best way, I think, the most efficient way, I think, in order to increase the capacity in Africa to produce more pharmaceutical products, vaccines included.
Thank you, President. We'll now turn to, excuse me, Madam, Prime Minister, sorry.
Ok, thank you. Todos estamos conscientes no Conselho Europeu que ninguém estará protegido enquanto não houver uma imunização à escala global. Por isso, temos todos, a União Europeia tem sido exemplar na sua contribuição para o COVAX. A Comissão Europeia criou o Team Europe e no âmbito do Team Europe os Estados-membros têm vindo a contribuir de uma forma conjunta para haver um apoio aos países mais necessitados e vários Estados-membros têm, numa relação bilateral, partilhado também as suas próprias vacinas. E, portanto, esse princípio é um princípio que está assente e que todos estamos a seguir.
Thank you. We're now going to our Indian journalist joining us remotely. Can I call on Nayanima Basu, please? Nayanima, can you hear us?
Yes. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, could you please point out to whom you want to address your question to?
Well, I think Madam can address the question. Anybody can address the question. Basically, I wanted to understand how are we going to handle this free trade agreement along with the investment protection agreement, because earlier the decision was to integrate both these pacts, but now there is going to be a standalone investment agreement. Also, on the free trade agreement, I would be grateful if you can answer what are some of the issues that are going to come up again, that are going to be the sticky issues, which earlier used to be duties on wine and spirits, automobile tariffs and all those things. Do they still come on the table once again as we resume the talks? Thank you so much for the opportunity.
So, to start with your latest, the last part of your question, this is way too early to be able to go in such detail. The free trade agreement is going to be negotiated in parallel with the investment protection agreement and in parallel with the geographic indicators. So this is all three in parallel at the same time, so that we move forward rapidly. And this is for us, I think, a way to approach it so that all different sides have the most benefit from it.
Last question is for Siddhant Sibal, also joining us remotely.
Hello, Your Excellencies. My question to you is, we know that Indo-Pacific is something where EU is keen on. What kind of practical cooperation are you looking with India when it comes to Indo-Pacific? Also, when it comes to China, where does your bet lies? Is it with Beijing or is it with New Delhi?
Mr. President.
No, it's certain that for the European Union, this region is very important. We would like to strengthen the ties with this region. That's why this meeting with the Prime Minister Modi was so important today. And there are different important fields that we would like to tackle. We just mentioned the economic cooperation and trade, investment, for example. But there are other important topics like security, like the regional concerns also. We have also the same multilateral approach because we think that we need to strengthen the international cooperation. And certainly we face very important global challenges, the digital transition, the climate transition, and it's possible to tackle those challenges only if we decide to work together, and we hope that it will be possible in the future to develop the ties with this important region for us.
This concludes our press conference of today. Thank you to the Portuguese presidency. See you soon in Brussels.
Boa tarde.
Tá bom. Acho que eu sou o Ciro.